You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramah Shemesh Israel, 5775, 2015. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Lech Lecha. The Torah gives us the story of Avram Avinu, of Abraham, and the commandment of God to go to the land of Israel, Lech Lecha, and the statement of God, the blessing of God, that Abraham and his progeny would be blessed. All those who bless the Jewish people, all those who bless Abraham will be blessed. Wherever he goes, he will bring blessing with him. Comes to the land of Israel, the Torah enumerates a few different stories, a few different occurrences that happened around Avram Avinu. The one that I'd like to focus on specifically today is the story of the Milchama, the war between the 4 kings and the 5 kings. As we read the Psukim tell us about this whole war. The 5 kings battle against the 4. The mighty ones conquer the weaker ones. Then Avram Avinu comes along and he's able to destroy those forces, return the people of Sodom, return his nephew Lot, and bring them back and, free them from captivity, etc. Now, in looking at the story and looking at it through the eyes of the midrash, there's something much deeper that's going on in this war. As I was thinking about what to speak about this week on the Parsha, we have the story of Avram and Sarah and them being captured, Sarah being captured. We have the story of Lot, the interaction between Avram and Lot choosing to go to Sodom. We have the story of Hashem telling Abraham that he's going to have a miraculous child at the age of 100. There's lots of different things to talk about, but I wanted specifically to speak about this war. And the reason that it came up for me and the thought process that led me to start looking around in the midrashim and the maforshim about this war was that it just hit me that, or perhaps I've seen this before, but it hit me that war between the 4 and 5 kings, that cataclysmic world war, which actually the midrash says it was the first time that there was war in the world. This war was not just any war, it was the war to begin all wars. So that war to me must represent something. Avram Avinu, Abraham is getting involved. It must have something to do with the war which the Chazal speak about, our sages speak about, the verses speak about, the war of Gog and Magog, the final war, which happens before the coming of Mashiach, before the Messiah. And the reason I was thinking this way is because we have a concept in Chazal and our sages that Ma'aseh Avisim Labanim, that whatever happens to the forefathers, whatever happens to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to Sarah, Rivka, and Rachel and Leah, etc., whatever happens to all of our progenitors, the ones who are the foundation, the root of the Jewish people, so that's something that we see repeated in their progeny, in their children, in us, in our lives, and throughout history. Now, as I was thinking about this idea, so I opened up the midrash, and it opened, the first page that it opened to, B'Hashgacha Pratis, with Hashem's help, was the page which speaks about this war, speaks about this entire story, and gives us a foundation for what this war is about. Because the war looks like it has to do with these 4 kings and the 5 kings, but the midrash makes it very clear that it actually had very little to do with their interaction, but rather the purpose of the war, the midrash says, was to draw Abraham, to draw Avraham into the war, which is what happened indeed. And the goal was to kill Avraham, to destroy Abraham, to destroy the Jewish people at the root, at the very beginning, before they would have a chance to bring their message to the world. And we'll see what that means as far as how that can play itself out in the future time before the Messiah comes, and what the ramifications of that are for us. But let's look at this midrash. I'd like to share with you the midrash because it's very interesting. The midrash sets up in a very interesting way. It says like this. Vayihi bimei Amraphel melech Shinar. The story starts off saying that it was in the days of Amraphel, the king of Shinar. Now, who is this person Amraphel? Who is this guy? Who is this king? Where is this place Shinar? What's it speaking about? So, before explaining it, the midrash tells us a story, very interesting story that happened, which seems at first to be unrelated, but as is always the case with midrashim, the midrash always gives us stories that are related, even on the surface they don't seem to be related or just seem to be peripherally related, but the stories are always directly related. You have to think about it, you have to dig deeper in order to understand it. But it says like this: Rabbi Yeshua the Sichnin b'shem Rabbi Levi Posach. Rabbi Yeshua from Sichnin, in the name of Rabbi Levi, he started saying his drasha, he started saying his lecture, and he brought a verse. It says in Tehillim, in Psalm chapter 37, verse 14. Cherav paschu rishoyim. The evil ones started off with a war, with a sword. V'gomer, etc. The verse continues. Charbam tova belibam. They started off with war, they had a certain intent, but their very swords, their very weapons, shall return into their own hearts. Meaning their intent was a certain intent, but their intent will turn back on them and they will be destroyed by their very intent. That's the verse. Now the midrash brings a story. The story is very interesting. Ma'aseh Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkenus. It was a story with a certain rabbi, his name was Eliezer ben Hurkenus. Shayu echav chorshim b'mishor, v'chorish bahar. All of his brothers, they had some kind of business together, and they were all farmers. His brothers would do their farming in a flat area, but he would go onto the mountain for whatever reason. Whereas as the Meforshim explain here, it was much more difficult. It is much more difficult to do farming on a mountain. V'nafal paras v'nishbara. As a result of the fact that he was working on a mountain, his cow, which he was using in order to do his work there, to do his farming, it fell and it broke. Maybe it broke a leg, whatever it was no longer usable. Omar, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkenus said, L'tayvasi nishbara parasi. My cow, this happened to my cow for my own benefit. This is a good thing. Barach v'holech le'etzel Rabbi Yechim ben Zakkai. At that point, he gave up his business, he ran away, and he went to study with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was a great, amazing sage, one of the greatest of his generation. Now, this Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkenus was so poor, he had so little to live on, that he actually had to eat pieces of dirt, pieces of earth, in order to survive. I guess there were some kind of minerals in the earth, and he had a horrible breath. His breath smelled horrible because that's what he was eating. So the other students of Rabbi Huna ben Zakkai came to the teacher and said, Reach pivshal Rabbi Eliezer, koshale. Eliezer has horrible breath. Amar loy. So Rabbi Huna ben Zakkai he understood immediately what had happened. He understood that it was because he was so poor. He had given up everything in order to study Torah, in order to have a relationship with God. So he said to Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkenus, just like Shahivish Reach Picha ala Torah, that your breath became smelly because of Torah, because of your studying the Torah, so too, as a result of your Mesiras Nefesh, your willingness to give up everything for God, so your Torah, your studying is going to be something which spreads out throughout the entire world, from one end of the world to the other. Now listen to this. This is an amazing part of the story. After some time, his father didn't even know what happened to him. He knew that he quit his job, he knew that he ran away, but he didn't know that he had gone to study Torah. So the father decided that since his son had gone off and wasn't working anymore, didn't know what happened to him, he thought maybe he had gone to just be a lazy good for nothing. He decided that when he dies, he's going to leave him out of his will. So he wanted to officially say this in front of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the great sage of the generation, who he didn't realize was a teacher now of his son. And so the father came and he saw his son. He was saying a lecture. And all the great people of that country were sitting there listening to him. Ben Tzitzis HaKeses, Ben Agdim Ben Gurion, Ben Kabel Savua, all these extremely wealthy, famous people of that time. And he found that he was darshaning and saying a lecture about our verse, about this very pasuk. He was saying an understanding of the verse in Tehillim and Psalms, which we quoted earlier, chapter 37, verse 14. The verse speaks about the evil ones who they started off these wars. This is a reference, said Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkenus in his lecture, this is a reference to Amraphel, this king of Shinar and his friends. The verse continues and says that they started this war in order to destroy, to kill, to cause a downfall of those who were poor. Who is that a reference to? It's a reference to Lot, the nephew of Abraham. And their intent was to slaughter those who were on the proper path. Ze Avraham. Their intent was to slaughter Abraham. They started this war. Their full intent was to try to get Avram, to destroy the path that Avram was setting out upon. The verse in Psalm says that their very intent returns to their hearts. Their very sword shall go through their own heart. What happens? What happens? Abraham comes with his servants, with his men, with 318 of his people, and he's able to vanquish those who wished to vanquish him. Amar le Aviv. So now his father, Rabbi Huna ben Hurkenus' father, was standing there, and he heard this amazing drush, he heard this amazing lecture, he saw all of these important people coming to listen to his son. He says, I'll tell you the honest truth, I came here in order to exclude you from my will. Now that I see that you've become a great scholar and a great sage as the result of your mesiras nefesh, of your willingness to give everything up, I want to give you all of my possessions, only to you. I'm not even going to give anything to your brothers. Amar harehem alai cherem. So Rabbi Huna ben Hurkenus responded to his father, I'm not willing to accept your gift. I don't want to take anything away from my brothers. I'm not willing to accept anything. I want only whatever, an equal portion as my brothers would have gotten. Now, I want you to hold on to that story, because soon we'll get to what is the connection between this story, Rabbi Huna ben Hurkenus, and the story of Avram Avinu, of Abraham, going to fight with these kings. But the midrash continues and speaks about what is the pshat, like why was it indeed that, who was Amraphel? Why did he want to destroy Abraham? What was the reason? What's going on here behind the scenes? So there's a few different midrashim. I'm not going to actually read them inside, but I'll tell you just the gist of them. One midrash tells us that who was Amraphel? Amraphel was actually the same person as Nimrod. We heard about Nimrod last week. Nimrod was somebody who was the king. He was the first one who had been the king over the entire world, so to speak. All the people had gathered into his area, and he led them all in their fight against God. That's why he was called Nimrod. The root of Nimrod is mered, which means to defy, to rebel. He was rebelling against God. And when Avraham Avinu and Abraham had been trying to convince people to steer away from Avodah Zarah, to steer away from idolatry, believe in one God, so Nimrod had tried to kill him, threw him into the Kibshon Eish, into the fire, as we spoke about last week. Now the midrash tells us that this Amraphel is the same guy. It's the same Nimrod. Shinar is the same place where Nimrod was. And he came along because he knew that Abraham was still, if Abraham is allowed to be in the world, something major is going to happen. Something major is going to happen that's going to adversely affect himself. It's going to adversely affect Nimrod. And therefore, Nimrod felt impelled to destroy Abraham, not to allow him to live. So what was the reason? So the Midrash tells us that in the name of Rabbi Huna, I'm going to read this one inside. What did they come for? Why did they come to do war? They wanted to battle against the apple of the eye of the world. What does that mean? So the Meforshim explain here that it's a reference to Abraham, who was the apple of the eye, so to speak, of God. He was the one who was indeed fulfilling the world, fulfilling the purpose of the world, trying to bring the world back on course, back into a relationship with God. Now, as a result of that, why did Nimrod care so much? What was his big deal? What was his big beef? The next line of the Midrash is very telling. This eye, Abraham, who was the apple of the eye as far as doing goodness, so they want to take that eye of God, as it were, that eye which judges. They're going to take that eye and they want to blind that eye. And here's a classic mistake of Ovrei Avera, of those who do sins. The classic mistake is that the sinner thinks that if I can destroy the one who's better than me, if I have done a sin and I can get rid of the guy who's doing good stuff, so then what happens to me is that I won't be judged so harshly. It's only that I'm going to be judged harshly as long as there's good guys out there who are doing better than me. But the moment that they are destroyed, thinks the Avarian, thinks the person who's the sinner, thinks Nimrod, if I can destroy Abraham, then the judgments will be destroyed. There won't be any judgments on me. Now, hold on to that thought for a moment. I just want to throw in one more important point, because it needs to be kind of inside of one's mind as we're learning about this, that there's a parallel here. As we said at the very beginning, there's a parallel here between all that's going on with Avram Avinu, with Abraham, and these nations who are trying to pull him into the war, and something that's going to happen in the future time with the Jewish people and the final war before the Messiah comes. The Midrash says like this. It says an amazing thing. Amar Rabbi Eliezer bar Avina. This is also in the same context, this whole war, it says like this. R Eliezer Rabbi Huna said, "Im ra'isa malchus misgaris elu be'elu." If you see many nations, many countries, that they are fighting one with the other in a parallel way to the way the 4 kings here fought with the 5 kings, tzapei l'ragel shel Mashiach. You can look out and expect the feet of the Messiah to start coming, to start walking in, as it were. Teida shekain, you should know that this is true. How do you know it's true? Sharei bimei Avraham, in the times of Abraham, al yidei shenizgaru hamalchios elu be'elu, as a result of these 4 and 5 kings fighting against one another, ba hageula le'Avraham. That is how a redemption came to Abraham. Right after this story, he's about to find out that he's going to have a child, that indeed there will be spiritual and physical progeny who will continue his message in the world until our very times. That was something that was about to be told to Abraham. He was about to experience that, and it seems that it was a result of this war, that this is all connected. Everything that's going on is connected. So it tells us, Rabbi Eliezer bar Avina, that in the future time, before the Messiah, there will be a similar upheaval in the world. Just like there was a first war, there will be a final war. And that war, there will be in a parallel way, will be that event that comes before the final Geula, the redemption that's going to occur to the Jewish people. So it's important. The Midrash makes it very clear that there are parallels. The parallels are amazing, very interesting. And now I'd like to come back to the points that we were making. First of all, about the story with Rabbi Eliezer and Hurkenus, trying to understand the story. What is it connected to Avram, to Abraham? The whole story with him, losing his job and then going off to learn, and then his father being ready to remove him from the will, but then giving him everything, and then him saying, "No, I don't want everything. I just want just equally." What does that have to do with our story of Avram Avinu? So I'd like to show that there's an amazing parallel that occurs here. Amraphel, or as we could call him, Nimrod, he thought that he has to destroy Abraham. He has to kill out Abraham in order that he should be able to get scot-free, to get off the hook, so to speak, from all the things that he was doing wrong in his relationship with God. Now, he was wrong. What happens in the end? The very sword that he took out, that he unsheathed, in the end destroyed himself. What happens in the end? He loses the war. Abraham comes and destroys all those kings, including Amraphel. Now he comes back and he brings Sodom. Sodom represents the deepest evil in the world. In fact, Sodom is going to be destroyed. Now, Avram Avinu does something amazing and very interesting and seemingly incorrect. Avram Avinu, he comes back from the war. He's come to retrieve his nephew Lot, bring back all the people of Sodom back to the land of Israel, back to where they belong. And the king of Sodom comes out and he says to Abraham, you can keep the spoils, but I want you to return my people. Now, Abraham says, no, I'm not going to touch anything. You are going to get back every single thing that you deserve. Now, what's interesting here is that, why didn't Avram keep them? Why didn't Avram keep them? Maybe he could return them to the straight and narrow. Maybe he could lead them and guide them and direct them. So there's a midrash that points out that actually, if you look at the psukim, it says that he returned the women, and he returned the rechush, he returned all of the booty, but it doesn't say he returned the children. And indeed, the Meforshim explain that he took the children with him. He was able to be Magayer them, to direct them towards God. He couldn't get the parents out of their state of evil, out of the spiritual decadence that they experienced, that state that they were in, but he was able to save the children. So it's very interesting. Now, if we look at this, we can see the parallel with Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkenus. It's almost like God is saying, look, Hashem is saying, I want to give you, Avram Avinu, all of the reward that there is. I want you to be my only heir, just like Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkenus' father. And Avram is saying, I don't want to take everything for myself. I want things to be distributed fairly. I don't want to take all of these people. I don't want to take all of the rechush. He could have taken all of that, all of the booty, all of the money, everything. And certainly had a right to do that. But symbolically, by not taking the rechush, not taking the bounty, what he was saying was, I don't want to be the only one who steps into the world to come. I don't want to be the only one who gets there. I want even the sinners, the people who don't deserve it as much, I want them to be able to step in there. I want my zchus, my merit, to be distributed to everyone else as well. I don't want to be the only one there. So Amraphel, Nimrod, his whole concept is, let me destroy Abraham. Let me destroy him so that God won't judge me. And God won't just give Abraham all the good that there is, just, in comparison. Abraham takes the opposite tack and he says, no. He says, I'm going to win. And ultimately the Jewish people will also succeed. The war will occur, and it will look like the world is saying, look, let's get rid of the Jews. Let's get rid of them because they shame us in a certain sense. They're so good. Like, why? You think about it. It's crazy. Like, the Jewish people are the most moral people in the world. Even the secular amongst the Jewish people, even they have a moral standard which is much higher. And yet, you look at the way that the news, the media presents Israel, presents the Jewish people as if we're morally decadent, as if we're horrible, destroy the Jewish people, the Iranians want to destroy us. Even the President of the United States says that Israel is at the root of the problem in the Middle East. I mean, these are things that don't make sense. Like, we look at ourselves and we say, we're doing what's right. We're trying to follow God's will. We're trying to be morally proper. We're trying to do what's right and upstanding. And yet we are judged negatively. What's the pshat in it on a deeper level? I don't believe that this is true perhaps on a conscious level, but certainly on a deeper level, on a spiritual level. There's a statement here which is the same, that let us destroy those who are morally superior so that we won't be judged in a way, because let us be the ones who are the greatest. Let us be the most morally superior, as it were. And now what is the result, ultimately, of what occurs in this final war, as it parallels the story of Avram Avinu? Just like Abraham said, I'm not taking all of the rechush. I'm not willing to take all the reward for myself. Not willing to take all the bounty, the booty, the spiritual booty for myself. I want it to be distributed. I don't even want to take the people. Because if I take the people, really I'm taking away their bechir, I'm taking away their free will. I want them somehow to be able to choose on their own, to be able to have a relationship with God. That they should be able to be present here. Avram Avinu, in speaking on behalf of Sodom, is saying, I want you, God, not to give up on them. It's in next week's Parsha, but I want you not to give up on them. Let them be able to choose you. Let them have another chance. God said they are just too far gone. But in saying that, in not fully taking the people of Sodom under his wing completely, in a certain sense, that would have taken away their bechira and they wouldn't have been able to be present at all. By Avram saying, no, I can't take them with me. I need them to be able to choose on their own. What he's really saying is that there has to be an effect. Yes, I can affect them, but if I'm too close to them, I'm affecting them too deeply, too much. The Jewish people throughout history have done the same thing. We've been there. We've never tried to convert anyone. We've never tried to force anybody to be like us. Here we are. This is our message. Please choose to be like us in a certain sense. Please choose to have a relationship with God. Please choose to believe in one God. Please choose to believe in humility, in chesed, in kindness, all the things that the Torah espouses. But we never force anybody. And in doing so, what we're really doing is we're saying, there's this goodness that, we have all rights to. We're the ones who have all along, so to speak, been doing what's right, been in a relationship with God. And we have all the rights to inherit the world to come, to inherit this relationship with God, to have a real relationship. But we say no, we don't want to be the only ones there. We want this to be something that everyone has access to. We want this to be something that all the people of the world can have a chance to access. And indeed, there's a geula that occurs to Abraham as a result. That which they try to destroy us, that which the Nimrod tries to destroy Abraham, the result is no. The result is the opposite. Abraham is able to indeed bring back the children of Sodom. Perhaps not the Sodomites themselves, but he can bring back the children of Sodom. And in a similar way, the Jewish people one day will be able, as our Chazal tell us, as the prophets speak about, one day the Jewish people will be the source of spirituality for the entire world. It may not seem that way. It may seem like the opposite, but it's something that will occur. And it's something that occurs in a difficult and challenging way, because evil needs to be destroyed and evil needs to destroy itself. But indeed, just like we see that Rabbi Eliezer and Hurkenus, it seemed like it was something that he was doing wrong. It seemed like he was going to be lost. It seemed like he was going to be out of the will. Ultimately, he was in the will. And how did it come? As a result of him explaining these very verses. And not only was he going to be in the will, he's going to get everything, but he says, no, I don't want to get everything. And the same way the Jewish people speak that way, Abraham speaks that way, and ultimately the entire world will be zocha, will merit, And I hope and I pray and I bless you, and please bless me, that we should all merit to be able to see the coming of Mashiach berachamim, with compassion and with a revelation of Hashem through us. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.